Hello and welcome to New Frontiers on CCTV International. I'm Ji Xiaojun in Beijing. In today's program, we're beginning a short series in which we'll investigate the history and development of Chinese porcelain. A few years ago, at a place called Hongshan in Jiangsu province, a vast trove of ancient porcelain was unearthed. The pieces, which came in many shapes and sizes, dated from the Warring States period, more than 2,500 years ago. It was an astounding discovery, and it raised a number of questions. For instance, there was the matter of where the porcelain originated.
In the summer of 2005, there was general amazement when a huge number of superb Celedon objects in a great many varieties and shapes were unearthed from a burial ground dating back more than 2,500 years to the Warring States period. The burial ground in present-day Hongshan district, Wuxi, Jiangsu province, had been for the exclusive use of the aristocrats of the ancient state of Yue. The finds were the best preserved of any found anywhere in China at any time, and they made archaeologists feel compelled to rewrite the history of Celedon. But there was even more to come. Upon seeing some of the unearthed finds, a man came forward to say he had seen similar objects a dozen or so years before at a place about 50 kilometers from the excavation site. The astounding discovery and the subsequent revelation pointed to a mystery and raised a number of questions. Where had this blue china originally come from? Was it in fact the earliest form of porcelain in the real sense of the term? If these finds verified that porcelain production was taking place in China 3,000 years ago, then when exactly did porcelain production begin? Deqing County in Zhejiang province is located in the western part of the Hangjia Lake Plain, with Shanghai to its east, Hangzhou to its south, and the heavily wooded Morgan Mountains to its west. A favorable location indeed. This area was already a land of abundance 5,000 years ago, when its unmatched location and abundance of resources gave rise to Liangzhu culture, one of the earliest forms of Chinese civilization. And even today, Deqing County is regarded as one of China's top 100 most powerful counties. For thousands of years, the people in this area have carried on a relatively worry-free way of life, lacking nothing. For a long time, three industries in particular promoted the prosperity of the area: fish farming, the growing and harvesting of bamboo shoots, and the raising of silkworms. However, one industry was missing, and it was an industry that had been developed by the ancestors of the people of the region in the most remote of times. This monograph, produced by a now deceased Japanese scholar who was an established expert in ancient Chinese porcelain, documents the author's experiences in archaeology in the 1940s, after he followed the Japanese armies to China. A considerable part of the book is devoted to finds made by the Japanese scholar in Deqing County. The finds he made were so ancient that they defied attempts by archaeologists of the period to come to grips with their significance. In the end, the Japanese scholar named what he found Deqing ancient porcelain, little knowing it would stand shoulder to shoulder with other great forms of porcelain from ancient times. The book by the Japanese archaeologist aroused much interest from Zhu Jianming, a research fellow at the Deqing County Museum. An old hand at the preservation of cultural relics with more than 20 years of experience, Zhu Jianming knew Deqing County like the back of his hand, yet he had never heard of anything in the area related to porcelain making. Although he had read many books and historical records on the subject, he had failed to find any documentation concerning porcelain production in Deqing County. But had porcelain production taken place in the area so long ago that all references to it had been lost? Had the period in which porcelain was produced in the area been very brief, or had it been something much more brilliant, something that history had somehow kept hidden? This place, Jiaoshan is where shards of black porcelain were discovered for the first time after the founding of New China. In 1956, the county primary school tore down part of the ancient city wall near Jiaoshan Hill in order to enlarge the school's campus. In the process, a large number of porcelain fragments and kiln tools were revealed. Today, shards of porcelain can still be found here and there along the old city wall. A section of the ancient city wall still stood on Jiaoshan Hill, and on the hill, the archaeologists unearthed pots, bowls, cups and plates, together with yet more tools used at kilns. And so in the 1950s, Deqing Kiln was formally established as an archaeological term among those engaged in porcelain studies.
它主要是1956年。 当时正值是全国第一次文物普查，在德清的那个焦山啊，有一基本建设，那出土了很多的瓷片。那我们浙江省文管会就是派那个汪洋先生啊到这里来做了一些这个视觉跟那个调查清理，采集了许多标本。当时是那个他们很惊讶的，就是发现了黑瓷。 在当时来讲，是全国是第一次发现时代那么早的黑瓷，所以呢，就德清窑其实就是黑瓷的那个代名词。
Among all the finds unearthed from Deqing Kiln, this piece is perhaps the most representative. The mouth is shaped like the head of a rooster, and it has a thin neck and a well-rounded belly. It is pitch black, and it is very shiny and smooth. It is a rare masterpiece from remote antiquity. A number of black porcelain items unearthed since the 1950s are also preserved and protected inside Deqing County Museum. All of the pieces on display here share something in common. They're all dark in colour but slightly yellowish. They're made from very fine clay and they're decorated with simple patterns. All were used in daily life, and this sets them apart from porcelain objects produced at the O and Yue kilns, which were in operation at about the same time. To differentiate these black porcelain objects from the other types, scholars refer to them as Deqing kiln porcelain. The history of Chinese porcelain, published in the 1970s, describes the Deqing kilns in this way. Of the blue and black porcelain they produced, black porcelain made up the majority. The book ascribes the failure of the Deqing kilns to leave behind any footprints in history to their short lifespan of little more than 100 years between the Eastern Jin and early Southern dynasties. As relatively few black porcelain objects had been unearthed from the Deqing kilns, scholars saw this as evidence for their short lifespan assertion. However, this conclusion was to be thrown into doubt when black porcelain from the kilns of Deqing was found on the Korean peninsula and in Japan. In other words, these items were exported.
The latest finds from the Deqing kilns suggest that they played a far more important role in the history of Chinese porcelain than scholars had previously thought. Among the first experts to recognize the Deqing kiln's significance was a man named Zhu Jianming.
When the Deqing kilns were first given a niche in the Hall of Porcelain Art, Zhu Jianming was just a newcomer to porcelain studies who knew little about the differences between black porcelain and blue porcelain, and he knew nothing about their significance. However, after a long and difficult journey lasting more than 20 years, Zhu Jianming was to become an expert in Chinese porcelain and a key figure in the rewriting of the history of Chinese porcelain. In order to reach this point, he delved into historical records in search of scattered clues and brought them together. And in the end, he was able to restore to the mysterious black porcelain from Deqing the prestige it deserved. Porcelain making began in China in the early Neolithic age. In a place in Jiangxi province given the rather romantic name the Cave of Immortals, shards of pottery have been found that are more than 10,000 years old. The difference between items of stoneware and pottery objects is that pottery items were the first objects fashioned from a man-made material. As such, pottery represents a big step forward taken by humankind, one that reveals a desire to conquer water, fire, and clay. The era of the Shang and Zhou dynasties between the 17th and the 2nd century BC was an important period in China's pottery-making history. According to rites of the Zhou dynasty trades, pottery making branched off from other trades to become an independent trade that enjoyed equal prestige. People working in the pottery trade were known as pottery masters.
中国瓷器的发展，它是从云梯琴瓷来的，云梯琴瓷是从云纹人头来的，云纹人头是从陶器来的。所以中国的瓷器发展有个4个步骤，这个呢，在世界上是独一无二的，创造万年的发展过程。
陶瓷的发展的话，可以用2大驱动力来表示。一大驱动力的话就是好看，一大驱动力的话就是好用。那么在好用这一块以后的话，陶器的话，因为吸水率大，另外的话它非常难以清洗。那么人解决这个问题以后的话，最后为瓷器的出现的话奠定基础。第二个是这个好看，好看的话实际上的话，因为陶器比较粗糙，怎么让它表面好看？这发明了很多的话，比如陶艺，中国历史上的话一个制造技术。所以在这个驱动力驱动下的话，实际上有4大发明或者4。